Tottenham have been linked with two brand new wonder kids from Italy and France. Meanwhile, Fabrizio Romano has announced that there's a chance Tottenham will bid big for both Pedro Neto and Desiree Doué, two of the names at the top of our recruitment list. And of course, England have somehow made the semi-finals of the European Championships. I'll be telling you why I think that has happened and how maybe we can go all the way without ever having to play well. All this and more on today's episode of Daily Premier League Transfer News with me, Barnaby Slater. Thank you so much for watching and listening, guys. Thank you for all your support as ever. Press that like button. Give me a subscribe if you haven't already. Helps me to make this daily content for you. And you can become a member, only £1 a month. All the details in the description box. But let's get into it. And of course, as ever, on a Monday, starting with Tottenham Hotspur, my team. And as I mentioned at the top, there is a big chance, according to not only Fabrizio Romano, but also Paul O'Keefe, that Spurs could go big for both Desiree Doué and Pedro Neto, two big names who've come to the fore in terms of players that Tottenham are looking to buy to progress their forward options this coming season. We're now looking at pure pace. We're looking at dribbling ability. We're looking at the ability to be direct and hurt teams in attacking areas. And these two names are both very exciting. Fabrizio Romano has made a few quotes over the weekend and on Friday about this. First of all, he said, Pedro Neto and Spurs. He is one of the names they have on the list. For sure, the only doubt about Neto has been about injuries. So that is the point to clarify. But he's one of the players they appreciate. Also, Romano going more into the fact that we're in for Desiree Doué. Apparently, his family will have a huge influence on what he decides to do. According to Romano, he says his situation is one to watch over the coming weeks because it will be an incredibly competitive dance amongst other clubs to see if Tottenham can get him over the line. Bayern Munich and Paris Saint-Germain both interested. However, Romano does say because Tottenham have a strong relationship with Rennes, having loaned them both Joe Rodon and Jed Spence in the past, it is still a possibility. About those other clubs interested in Doué, Romano said, Bayern are one of the clubs that are monitoring Desiree Doué, the talented Rennes winger. He's a very good player, a very big talent with many clubs interested in several countries. Paris Saint-Germain have been following the player, and Bayern have been in contact also with people close to the player. As well as this, Tottenham have Desiree Doué on their shortlist alongside other targets. And so many clubs are keeping a close eye on this player because Doué could be one of the names to watch in the next few weeks. There is movement around him. His family, as I mentioned, have a big influence in the decision, but Doué is for sure in the list of these clubs. We're waiting for one of them to make a move to understand what is going to happen on both the player's side and the club side, because for Rennes, he is a crucial player, but there has been movement. Now, what does this instinctively make me think? Firstly, can we get Big Ange Postecoglou on the phone to Desiree Doué? We know it. We know it from the deals that have been done so far since Ange Postecoglou has come to the club. If you can get him on the phone with the player and the representatives, they see the project, they see the attacking football, they see the front foot freedom that Ange allows these kind of players, and that excites them. It allowed us to get Dragusin away from the clutches of Bayern Munich. It allowed us to get Lucas Bergfall ahead of the clutches of Barcelona. So can Big Ange speak to Desiree Doué and say to him, we currently do not have a player who can do something a little bit different, a dribbly winger, someone who can drop a shoulder, beat a couple of players at once, free up space for some of our other more technical players. Maddison, Bergvall, Bentancur, all these kind of players who need a bit more space. And I think Doué could be a really good option. And the fact that Romano is so sure that we are one of the three clubs interested in him, certainly who have kind of spoken out about it, very exciting news. This is one that I think may not go away. And I don't know, maybe wrongly, I'm hopeful that this could be a deal we get over the line. Another one that I've been saying all summer, that I think this will be this summer's James Maddison signing for Spurs. Eberechi Eze. If you watched the quarter-final of the Euros, you'll see he came on again for Gareth Southgate's England and did a good job. Always looking to do something, always looking to be attacking, looking to be progressive, looking to get an extra yard of space, make a cross. He had a shot, of course, which I thought he snatched at a little bit in that England game. But he is a player that I think would be perfect for Spurs. And according to reports at the back end of last week and the weekend, the player is open to a transfer this summer. He has a release clause set at £60 million with a further £8 million in add-ons. Apparently, Tottenham are not opposed to spending big on targets that they deem to be the right player this summer. And for me, let me know in the comments what you think, but for me, Eze is that marquee signing this summer. He glides across the surface. He's so comfortable on the ball, and he wants the ball all the time. Do you remember the first 10 games of last season? James Maddison was top of his form because he wanted the ball all the time. Didn't matter whether we had the ball on our own byline with Van de Ven or Romero, or if we were in the final third. Maddison always calling the ball, wanting to be the main man, and I think Eze is the same. And if we could get those two players in this summer, it could be an incredibly exciting season next year for Tottenham Hotspur. Other reports coming out of Tottenham this weekend are that Ange Postecoglou wants a couple of new faces in to the club within the next 2 to 3 weeks. The coaching staff and the players have come back for pre-season. I'll talk more about that later in the episode. They came back first on Saturday for testing originally, and then properly getting on the field with the ball on Sunday. And Ange wants to integrate more of these new faces alongside Bergvall, alongside Archie Gray, who are there. He wants to integrate them and give them a proper pre-season before the kind of career tour, before the friendly games start. So he wants them in soon, and maybe that's why we're ramping up on the Desiree Doué situation, and the talk about Eze won't go away. Some of these wonder kids at Tottenham are now adding to their potential recruitment list. Patrick Dorgu, left back from Lecce, available potentially for €30 million. Spurs have a lot of interest in him, as well as Rayan Cherki from Lyon. He is apparently seen as far from the finished product, but apparently he's made big progress since the appointment of their manager Pierre Sarge at Lyon last season. One thing I would say about Lyon: we have dealt with Lyon in the past on transfers, and their chairman is almost as hard to deal with as Daniel Levy. So that would not be an easy deal to do. But again, very exciting to see that Spurs are really looking to do what I think kind of Dortmund have been doing really successfully over the past 5, 6, 7 years or so. And that is try and pick up these young wonder kids when they are still young enough that the fee isn't going to be astronomical. I mean, some of you might say the fee for Archie Gray, £30 million plus Joe Rodon adding on another 10. Maybe that is astronomical, but that's just the world we live in at the moment. But the fact that we're going for these players that are incredibly exciting, young talents, raw talent, but hungry, and a chance for this Spurs squad to grow as a young, hungry side the same way that Pochettino's young team did. I think we're doing it the right way. I think the recruitment side are aligned with the manager, which is aligned with the kind of football we're playing. We're getting players in and interested in players who are technically proficient, who want to get on the football. And it's very exciting, whereas it feels like under the days of Jose Mourinho, under the days of Nuno, under the days of Antonio Conte, the transfer policy was scattergun. It was scattergun. Think of Ivan Perisic as an idea, as an example. He was a player that Conte wanted because he'd played for him before, sure. But in terms of if it doesn't work out with Conte, which 6 months later it didn't, then Perisic, he got an injury but kind of deemed surplus to requirements. We ended up giving him away and we paid him a lot of wages. So I prefer this young, hungry transfer strategy that we have, and I'm really excited for the next few years at Spurs. More rumours that Tottenham do intend to sign another central midfielder this summer, despite the signing of Archie Gray. However, for the first time, we're hearing that Conor Gallagher is no longer a target. That will be because that profit and sustainability rules deadline went in June the 30th, and Spurs do not want to pay top whack for Conor Gallagher, so they will wait to see whether he signs a new deal at Chelsea and maybe look into him at the end of the transfer window, or maybe more realistically January or next season on a free, if Chelsea do not give Conor Gallagher the contract that he feels he deserves. Tottenham apparently yet to receive any concrete offers for Richarlison, despite a lot of interest from Saudi Arabia, from Al Ittihad and Al Hilal. Tottenham are expecting £60 million for the striker. They want to get the money they get back. Did you see Ivan Toney's no-look penalty at the weekend? Ivan Toney is still on the list for Spurs. For me, the only way we would get Ivan Toney into the club is if Richarlison left. I don't know. I think there's too many moving parts. I think Richarlison will be playing for Tottenham in pre-season, and we will give him a chance. Ange will give him a chance to get his confidence up and hopefully show that he's able to play enough games to make him worthwhile as a number 9 option in our squad. The big problem with Richarlison that the club have is that he doesn't play enough games. Mikey Moore, our young talent who's played some minutes already for Tottenham under Ange Postecoglou, he is expected to be heavily involved in pre-season. Borussia Dortmund are sniffing around the player. I mentioned that Tottenham now, I think, looking to kind of imitate Dortmund's strategy of getting the best young players around, well, no surprise that Dortmund are sniffing around Mikey Moore. But apparently Moore is happy at Tottenham and Ange Postecoglou has plenty of belief in him. That's according to Alistair Gold. The other clubs sniffing around Mikey Moore at the moment, Manchester City and Manchester United. Not a surprise because he's so talented. But Ali Gold says everyone at Spurs is confident he will stay there. United and City apparently have made offers to Mikey Moore. And although Moore has agreed his first professional deal with Spurs, he doesn't get to sign it legally. He's not allowed to sign it till his 17th birthday. Sorry, not his 70th. That would be a very strange academy deal. So he's not locked down just yet, but he has given his word to Tottenham. He's happy at Tottenham, and I think the fact that he's played some minutes for Ange Postecoglou already will help with that. Obviously, realistically, if Mikey Moore were to go to Man City, he wouldn't play any minutes for a long time. However, I could see, if I was him or in his family, the potential attraction of going to a Borussia Dortmund. He would look at someone like Jude Bellingham and how his career has improved since going to Dortmund. And maybe he'd think, wow, I could get first team minutes straight away at Borussia Dortmund. So that is one Tottenham have to be careful of. We do not want to lose another of our great talents. Don't forget, we lost Madueke. He ended up going from our academy to Holland, getting first team minutes there. And Chelsea ended up spending through the nose on him, and he's done well at Chelsea, to be fair. Meanwhile, more academy talent. Jamie Donnelly, who's another player who's got minutes under Ange Postecoglou. Luton Town, who went down last season, they are extremely keen on signing Jamie Donnelly on loan. I think that could be a good move for Donnelly. Luton will be about at the kind of top ends, the top echelons of the Championship next season. And Donnelly will get a chance to prove his worth. And of course, Luton have just lost Ross Barkley, haven't they, to Aston Villa. So they'll be looking for a creative 8/10. And that is exactly what Jamie Donnelly is. He can also play 9. I've had a lot of you in my comments saying how Donnelly is kind of like a Harry Kane prototype. So he can play in the 9 as well. But I like him as an 8 or a 10. So I think Luton could be an interesting one for him. Ipswich Town apparently considering Jed Spence. I've said he's another example of a player that this summer, if we can get anywhere near £10 million for him, same with Emerson Royal, anything to do towards £10 to £15 million, and I'll talk about Emerson more in a second, we should take that money, add that money to our budget so that we can get more players in. Spence isn't going to get game time under Ange Postecoglou, so if Ipswich are interested in him, that would be a good move for him, really good move for him, so hopefully that could happen. AC Milan. Talking about Emerson Royal, they've hoped to get him for £10 million, but apparently we're entering the key stages of that deal. It's not going away. I think Milan really want him. A lot of progress has been made from Milan in convincing Tottenham to lower their initial €30 million request, with the Italian club insisting that the valuation comes down to between 18 and 20 million euros or 15 million euros plus bonuses. Spurs apparently ready to listen to that. That's according to Gazzetta Italia. That's Italy's big sports paper. Like I said, 18 to 20 million euros, snap their hands off, wave goodbye to Emerson Royal. Thank you so much, but you are not an Ange Postecoglou player, I'm afraid. He came back, I'm sure you saw this weekend, and posted on his Instagram, having come back for pre-season, the king is back. And I saw Billy T, a big Spurs fan on Twitter. He said, I would love 10% of this man's self-confidence. You've got to give it to Emerson Royal. The confidence is through the roof. Another Spurs Academy player. Apparently inquiries are plenty about Will Lancashire, the Tottenham Academy striker. Question marks remain over whether he'll remain at Spurs for next season or whether he will go out on loan. He is, of course, club-trained and homegrown. That's another Ali Gold bit of insight from his contacts within the club. Meanwhile, over at the Copa America, Christian Romero played all 90 minutes for Argentina as they advanced to the semi-finals. Gio Lo Celso played 12 minutes. Neither player took a penalty in the shootout. Brazil have gone out to Uruguay, haven't they? And Rodrigo Bentancur scored during that penalty shootout to knock out Brazil. That was a bit of a surprise, but good to see Bentancur getting game time and scoring his penalty. So I mentioned obviously that Tottenham are now back in pre-season, at least the players who've not been playing during internationals during this summer so far. So the list of the Tottenham players who are back in pre-season training and who I've seen on their social media: Fraser Forster, Alfie Whiteman and Brandon Austin in terms of the goalkeepers, Pedro Porro, Jed Spence, Ashley Phillips, Destiny Udogie back from his injury, that's really positive, Ben Davis and Sergio Reguilon back at the club while he looks for somewhere else to play this season, I'm sure. Archie Gray and Lucas Bergvall, the brand new signings there. Ollie Skip, Pat Matassar, James Maddison, Jamie Donnelly and Yves Bissouma, they were all there in terms of midfielders and strikers and forwards. Dejan Kulusevski, Manor Solomon back on the training ground after his injury that basically laid him off for all of last season. Brennan Johnson, Brian Hill back, while he'll be looking for another club, I'm sure. Mikey Moore, Richarlison, Alejo Valise back from his loan from Seville, Dane Scala and Timo Werner. So enough players there. Not a lot of Tottenham players actually compared to usual were playing for their international teams this summer. So that's a good basis of players for Ange to get into, to get some good pre-season training done with them, and hopefully push us on to a real challenge this season. I don't know, I've got a good feeling about this season. I should have said this maybe towards the top of the episode, but it is Heung-min Son's 32nd birthday today. Tottenham leader, Tottenham legend. Happy birthday, Son Heung-min. Unbelievable to think that he's 32 years old, but he's still like a spring chicken. He's still got the legs on him, and he's just kept his body so right down the years. He's not a socialite type of person. The only kind of social stuff he gets involved in really is fashion. Doesn't seem to be a drinker. He's said, hasn't he, that he has no plans to get a girlfriend until he finishes his football career. His father takes him to secondary training some days at the David Lloyd Centre. I don't know if you've watched that documentary, Sensational. It's worth watching. I think it's on Amazon Prime. It just shows that he lives with his father, and his father, after training at Spurs, will then take him down to the David Lloyd Centre nearby for extra training. That's how committed Sonny is. 32 years old. Happy birthday, Sonny. We're so lucky to have you at the club, and as I've said many times, sign him up, get him on an ambassadorial deal or a coaching deal after he retires. Keep him at the club. He's the face of the club. Spurs legend Jan Vertonghen no longer with us at the club, but he's announced his retirement from international football. A stellar career, super Jan Vertonghen. We were lucky to have him. Maybe even took him for granted sometimes. That centre-back partnership between Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld, and especially when we had Danny Rose on the left and Kyle Walker on the right. Amazing back four. Underrated, incredible back four, and one of the massive reasons why we got so close under Mauricio Pochettino. Meanwhile, Joe Rodon, who obviously has just left the club, he's given a thank you statement on Instagram, says, a huge thank you to everyone at Tottenham Hotspur. It was a pleasure to play for the club with such great teammates, and I would like to thank the fans for the support they showed me in my time there. Now it's time for a new adventure. Thank you, Joe Rodon. Never quite seemed the right kind of fit for a Tottenham Hotspur centre-back. Always felt to me a little bit uncomfortable, almost visually more than anything on the ball. But a good stopper, a good centre-half, he'll do well at Leeds. Meanwhile, another Spurs player who's left the club, we let him go on a free. He is looking like, Japhet Tanganga I'm talking about, looking like he's going to join Millwall on a permanent deal after Tottenham chose not to extend his contract by the extra year that we had an option for. He was on loan at Millwall last season, did well there, and looks like he's going to go there permanently. That's a good opportunity for Japhet Tanganga, who is a talented player. Don't forget, he's been talked about before in the England conversation even. But he just lost his way a bit. Some injuries, went on loan at Germany, which didn't go well. He didn't get a single minute out there. And I think a good start again, proper full-time back in the Championship, and he can rebuild his career. Similarly to how maybe Cameron Carter-Vickers did actually after he left Spurs. He's so highly thought of at Celtic now. Some Celtic fans talk about Cameron Carter-Vickers as being as talented as what they saw when Virgil van Dijk was there, which is incredible. So maybe Japhet Tanganga can rebuild his career so that something similar can happen. Meanwhile, some quotes from former Spurs star Darren Anderton on what Tottenham need in the transfer window. Actually, before I go into that, during Ian Wright and Gary Neville were asked on their podcast who were kind of underrated players that they played with during their England careers, and they both said Darren Anderton. Darren Anderton, Shaggy as his nickname was, for anyone who doesn't remember. What a player he was in the early 90s, crippled by injuries, got the nickname Sick Note, never played as many games as he could have done, but what an inspirationally talented player he was. Anyway, he said in terms of what Spurs need in this transfer window, he says, I think support in defence for Van de Ven. He's massive, but we need support for him, as I'm not sure I trust some of the others at centre-backs. He seems to be forgetting about Christian Romero, but yes, I do agree we need a fourth choice centre-back to go with Van de Ven, Romero, Radu Dragushin, who's had an unbelievable Euros and will be getting some much needed rest now before he comes back for pre-season. But we do need a fourth choice, and it does look like Calafiori has now gone to Arsenal, unfortunately. Okay, I'll get into some other more general Premier League transfer news now, and transfer news from further afield. Starting at Old Trafford, Man United have held talks with Joshua Zirkzee's agent to discuss contract terms, salary and commission. It looks like Zirkzee is going to happen. 40 million euros release clause. Erik ten Hag has apparently spoken to him on the phone. Talented young player, done well at the Euros. Man United getting their stuff together now. Meanwhile, they're increasingly confident on getting Matthias de Ligt through. The player has been clear with his agent, apparently. Only wants to go to Man United. Personal terms are in place. Talks ongoing. However, this morning I've seen, Monday morning, that apparently a petition has been started by Bayern Munich fans who do not want to see Matthias de Ligt leave. I wonder if that's got anything to do with the fact that they now have Eric Dyer as their potential centre-back instead of De Ligt. De Ligt, a prodigious talent back when he was at Ajax. I always wanted him at Spurs. He didn't have the best season last season. He's not even starting in the Dutch team that England are going to play in the semi-final of the Euros in a couple of days' time. But he is a prodigious talent and he's still very young. It would be a good signing for Man United. Wages will be high though. Fulham have apparently inquired about the availability of United's midfielder Scott McTominay, who's now 27. Be interesting to see if McTominay wants to stay at Old Trafford as kind of a squad player, just getting minutes here and minutes there under Erik ten Hag, or he could be a proper first teamer elsewhere. Meanwhile, United are going to sell Donny van der Beek. What a strange few years he's had at Manchester United. They're going to sell him this summer for a nominal fee rather than lose him on a free next season. He is rumoured to be going to Girona. Going to be completed early this week. United will receive a bit less than €1 million plus add-ons of €4 to €5 million. What a strange drop-off, because Van der Beek was incredible when he played in that Ten Hag team for Ajax that Tottenham somehow just about beat in the semi-final of the Champions League back in 2019. But since he went to Man United on a big fee, he's really dropped off. His form has just gone. Maybe it's another example of a player who gets a big fee, big wages, and doesn't quite have the motivation. I mentioned last week, United have given Bruno Fernandes the go-ahead to open talks with the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, and it could end up with him joining Cristiano Ronaldo at Al Nassr. That's a rumour that will not go away. UEFA have confirmed that Man United and Nice are not allowed to transfer players to each other, whether permanently or on loan, directly or indirectly, from July 2024 till September 2025. That's because they are in the same European competition and you're not allowed to do it when you have the same owners. Thiago has decided to retire from professional footballer. Obviously, the former Liverpool, Bayern and Barca player has made his decision. He had a lot of injuries when he was at Liverpool, but one of the purest players I've ever seen strike a football, an unbelievable passer of the ball. He's a loss to the game. But lots of injuries. Meanwhile, heading over to Chelsea, what a surprise, linked with many, many players again. Karu Matoma, liked internally from Chelsea, the Brighton winger. I would love him at Spurs, but he had a big injury last season, so it remains to be seen how he'll come back from that injury. But Chelsea like him, of course they do. Chelsea basically took all of Brighton's recruitment team and sporting directors, so no surprise that they're looking again to go back to Brighton like they did with Caicedo. Also, they've agreed a deal to sign Portuguese talent Renato Veiga from FC Basel. He's a left-footed, versatile defender and midfielder, and that package will be worth about €15 million. They are also prepared to complete 2 more young player signings. Details being sorted for Aaron Anselmino to join from Boca Juniors and for fullback Caleb Wiley to join from Strasbourg. Chelsea cannot stop hoovering up players. Big rumour from Aston Villa. They're interested in signing João Felix, but also Benfica are looking to take the player back. They sold him to Atletico Madrid 5 years ago for £114 million. And now they hope to get him back for just £12.7 million. What happened to João Felix? He is a talent, but he just hasn't made it work. He's been on loan at Chelsea. He's been at Barcelona. Aston Villa now interested in him. He's a good player. He's incredibly technically gifted. Is he physically strong enough for the Premier League? I don't know. Should he just go back to Benfica and re-energise his career there? But he went for huge money to Atletico Madrid, £114 million, and it's not quite worked out for him. Over to West Ham. Max Kilman has joined West Ham, £40 million. That is a here we go from Fabrizio Romano. Good signing for West Ham. Julian Lopetegui has worked with him at Wolves before, so West Ham getting more players through the door. Brighton have a verbal agreement to sign Mats Wiefer from Feyenoord. Fee apparently €30 million. That's a lot for Brighton, plus some bonuses. Meanwhile, another rumour that won't go away, another deal. Juventus are willing to accept €25 million with add-ons for Federico Chiesa. And some of my most kind of trusted people that I see on Twitter, Harry Brooks, for instance, one of the coaches that I like watching on Twitter, he says Spurs should try and get Federico Chiesa at that kind of money. Juventus are prepared to sell him. He's not part of Thiago Motta's plans. Meanwhile, a very odd story. I mentioned a few times Jadon Philogene, the Hull talent. Well, apparently there are some conflicting stories, but apparently last week Jadon Philogene agent showed up at the Barcelona offices unannounced, began a photo shoot in the car park, and was eventually asked to leave by security. Barcelona have since claimed they don't even know the name of the player and that it's just a PR exercise from the player's agent to drive up interest in the player. However, I heard another report that actually back in January, Philogene's agent did have a meeting with Barcelona and that it's Barcelona distancing them from that story. Mad stuff in football agent world. Mad stuff in terms of signings. That's what the summers are all about. And finally, guys, I do have to talk a little bit about England. They beat Switzerland on penalties in the quarterfinal. 5 out of 5 of those penalties scored. But the first thing I want to talk about, let me know what you think in the comments about this. I think for sure Harry Kane is injured and he is playing with painkilling injections. He is about 30% off his level and he's just wandering about. And I have to say it's hard. Back in 1966, Sir Alf Ramsey had to make a difficult decision because Jimmy Greaves was injured. Jimmy Greaves was our main striker, one of the best strikers in the world, one of the highest scoring strikers for England, and you could bank on him. But he got an injury, and Sir Alf Ramsey dropped him for Geoff Hurst, and Geoff Hurst scored a hat-trick in the final. I think Harry Kane is playing with painkilling injections. I get that he wants to play every game, but I think Southgate has to be strong and say to him, the best way we can use you going forward, Harry Kane, is to maybe bring you off the bench if it comes to extra time and use you as a bit of a battering ram, a player who can hold it up because we're playing so much long ball football. Jordan Pickford cannot stop himself from kicking it long every time, but Kane is not good enough at anything at the moment, I think, because of his injury. And I would be tempted to play Bellingham as a false 9 with Foden and Palmer behind him in the 10s. We've got to get Palmer on the pitch. He's the most exciting player at the moment. When he comes on, he's taking players on. He's making stuff happen. I know Southgate won't do this, but let me know in the comments what you think. I think we have to do that. The other exciting bit of news from that kind of late show that England put on against Switzerland, Luke Shaw came on and immediately we had more balance. Could Luke Shaw start against Holland and provide us that balance which will enable other players to get on the ball more in the positions that they're at their best at? So I would be tempted to start Shaw. I'd be tempted to start Bellingham in the 9. And we've just got to, at the moment, maybe we can win the tournament just playing absolute dross, but it is so hard to watch. It is unbelievably hard to watch. But you have to give Southgate credit in terms of the penalties and in terms of the penalty takers. Very, very impressive. And Trent Alexander-Arnold's last penalty in the top corner was Harry Kane-esque. Guys, thank you so much for watching and listening. Please do press like, press subscribe for daily Premier League transfer news and other news from wider afield. And for only £1 a month, become a member. All the details in the description box below. I'll be back tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Cheers.